Joseph Murphy's garden. Your mind is like a garden. What you plant in it will flourish for good or ill. Joseph Murphy. When I first heard those words, I didn't understand them until one day I realized I had been watering thorns and expecting flowers. Life isn't an accident or a cruel game of chance. It is a mirror that reflects what you silently feed when no one is watching, when it's just you and your rawest thoughts. Today I haven't come to fill you with theories. I have come for my voice to yank you out of that comfort that's slowly killing you. Because if you don't take control of what you plant in your mind now, your future will be nothing more than a recycled version of your past fears. And I don't want you to stay there. I want you to dare to build something that will make destiny tremble. The law that breaks time. They say time is a line that always moves forward, that what happened cannot be changed, and that what's to come can only be guessed. But that's what they taught you, so you wouldn't dare to look beyond what they allow. Joseph Murphy said it with the calm of a man who understood the human soul. Your subconscious mind knows no past, present, or future. For it, everything is now. What you believe is memory is nothing more than a movie you can reshoot. And what you call destiny is nothing more than a scene you haven't yet decided to write. And it took me years to understand it. I grew up believing that what hurt me was an eternal sentence, that humiliations, losses, and mistakes had been etched in stone that no one could move. And one day, without warning, I found myself talking to myself in silence, asking, what if that stone was made of clay? What if the past that tormented me wasn't a closed file, but an unfinished work that I could still mold? That day, something in me began to crack. I realized that we live trapped in stories that no longer exist, but we keep reliving as if they were today. We hold on to a pain from 10 years ago as if it were just inflicted this morning. We get dressed in broken memories and then complain that life feels uncomfortable. What if time weren't a flowing river, but a still ocean, where you can dive in at any point? What has already happened to you is just a set of images floating in your mind, and you are the only one who decides whether to contemplate or transform them. But there's a problem. Changing the past isn't an act of fantasy. It's an act of brutal faith, because to rewrite it, you first have to betray yourself. You have to look at what you believed was true and say, this no longer serves me. And that hurts because we fall in love with our wounds. We build entire identities around what we suffered. Sometimes we don't heal because deep down, we don't know who we would be without that scar. And then the timeless law arrives and rips everything out of your hands. It tells you, you are not what happened to you. You are what you decide happened to you. And in that instant, your rational mind shouts that it's impossible. But your soul knows it's not only possible, but your only way out. I remember the first experiment I did. It was a conversation I had had years ago with someone I loved, and it ended in a cold silence I could never forget. Every time I went back to that moment in my head, I felt the same heaviness in my chest. Joseph Murphy talked about entering that memory and changing it, not to deceive myself, but to heal. So I did. I closed my eyes and relived it. But this time, he didn't leave. This time, I said what I didn't say. This time, the silence was broken, and my heart reacted as if it had truly happened that way. I wasn't instantly cured, but something in me felt relieved. I understood that my subconscious didn't know if that had happened in reality or if I had just created it. It just knew that now, in its file, that scene had a new ending. That is the law that breaks time. It's not magic tricks. It's not denying what you lived. It is understanding that time is just a collection of perceptions, and that if you change the perception, you change the story. And if you change the story, you change the present. Think about it. How many of today's decisions are governed by something that happened to you years ago? How many opportunities have you rejected because your past told you that you aren't good enough, that you aren't capable, that that's not for you? How many loves did you kill before they were born because you were once broken and swore you'd never feel again? If you could go back to that moment and add a word, a gesture, a smile where there was abandonment, your whole future would open up like a new book, because the past isn't behind you. It surrounds you like a constant echo that you can change if you dare to speak differently. Joseph Murphy's voice accompanies me when I falter. Your subconscious mind accepts what you accept as truth. Repeat, insist, imagine, and the universe will obey. And then I understand that it isn't time that rules, it's me. But don't think this is easy. Rewriting the past is like entering a dark room where you know there are ghosts and deciding to look them in the eye. Sometimes I've broken down in the attempt. I've returned to memories so painful they left me trembling. But every time I dare, I come out different. Because every scene I transform not only changes my past, but changes who I am today, how I get up, how I look, how I love. And when you manage to do it once, you realize that the future is also malleable, that you can enter it with the same technique, with the same faith, and position yourself in a tomorrow that already exists in your mind and that will sooner or later be your present. The law that breaks time forces you to assume an enormous responsibility. You can no longer blame the past, because you now know you can rewrite it. You can no longer expect the future to surprise you, because you now know you can design it. And that is heavy because you no longer have excuses. Now everything is yours, the wound and the cure, the error and the opportunity. And the most brutal thing is that when you understand it, you feel a freedom that is frightening. You no longer depend on the calendar or the clock. You depended on your memory and your imagination, and now you control them. There are days when I wonder how many lives I would have lived if I had learned this sooner. How many hugs I didn't give. How many paths I didn't take. How many words I kept for fear of repeating a pain that no longer existed. And then I think maybe it all had to be this way so that I would understand that time is not a line, it is a key. And that key is in your hand right now. I don't know what has happened to you. I don't know what scene haunts you. But I know that if you close your eyes and enter it, you can change it. That you can decide that that no was a yes. That that closed door opened. That that person who left stayed. That that broken version of you was replaced by one that stood firm. And when you do it, your present will respond as if all of that were true, because for your subconscious, it will be. The law that breaks time does not come to console you. It comes to put you in front of yourself and ask you, are you going to keep repeating this story, or are you going to write a new one? And if you say yes, if you say enough, something changes in the air. The past stops being a weight and becomes building material. The future stops being an unknown and becomes an open canvas. And you stop being a prisoner of time to become its architect. I'm not asking you to believe me. I'm asking you to try it. Tonight, before you sleep, enter a memory that hurts you and remake it. Tomorrow when you wake up, enter a future you desire and live it as if it were already real and repeat it day after day until your life looks more like what you have created than what you were told you were. Your subconscious, a living archive. Of your reality, not a single thought fails to leave a trace. Not a single image goes unarchived. We think we forget, but in reality, everything remains. Everything. The subconscious is like a great living archive where nothing dies, where every word you heard, every look you received, every emotion that crossed you is still breathing, waiting to be called back to the stage. Joseph Murphy described it as the fertile land of the mind. Everything you plant there grows, but what almost no one tells you is that, just like the earth, it doesn't distinguish between seeds of flowers or thorns. And if today your life is a garden you don't like, it's because without knowing it, You have been watering the wrong seeds for years. I understood it late, and it hurt to understand it. It hurt to look inward and discover that most of the decisions I was making didn't come from my present, but from old, dusty, cobweb-covered files that my subconscious reproduced as new commands. It was like living with a script I hadn't written but kept repeating without pause. Don't you find yourself reacting without thinking, loving, or rejecting without knowing why, fearing things you've never experienced? That's not a coincidence. These are files that open on their own. The subconscious doesn't ask if you still want that to be true. It just acts, and therein lies the danger and also the salvation. Because if the subconscious acts without filtering, then you can go in and rewrite what it contains. The problem is that entering there isn't like opening a folder on your computer. It's like diving into a dark ocean without knowing what creatures are waiting below. The first time I tried, I did it out of desperation. My life was trapped in a pattern of loss and abandonment. Everything was leaving: people, opportunities, even my own confidence. I felt cursed until one day, listening to a phrase from Murphy, something hit me. Your subconscious accepts what you accept as truth. I was stunned. There was no curse. There was a blind acceptance that I didn't deserve to keep anything, and that belief was archived so deeply that I no longer saw it. But it governed everything. That night I decided to go in, not with strange rituals, not with magical formulas. I closed my eyes and descended. I saw scenes from my childhood, moments I had sworn no longer mattered. I saw a child watching someone leave and feeling that he wasn't good enough to be chosen. That was the seed. And I understood that it doesn't matter how many times you say, "I am enough," if, deep down, your archive still holds the opposite. The subconscious is not impressed with pretty words. It is transformed with images and emotions, as intense as those that marked you the first time, so I changed the scenes I found one by one. I saw myself not as the abandoned child, but as the protected child. I changed the words they said to me. I changed the end of the stories, and no, I wasn't denying reality. I was rewriting the file from which my present operated. Because the subconscious doesn't know if something is real or imagined. It only knows what it feels and keeps it as truth. And if you give it a new truth, everything you do, think, and feel aligns with it. But here comes the brutal part. The subconscious is not just memory, it is a creator. What it stores, it projects. It's like an old projector that plays the same movie over and over on the screen of your life. You can change cities, partners, jobs, and if the file remains the same, so does the movie. And that's why we sometimes feel that life is a vicious circle. It's not life, it's the file. And if you don't touch it, there's no real change. Do you realize what that means? It means that every fear that stops you is a record, not a destiny. That every impulse that sabotages your attempts to move forward is a recorded instruction, not a universal law. That even the love you believe you deserve is written on a page you can tear out and rewrite. And I know it sounds easy when I say it like that, but the truth is, it's not. Because entering the subconscious means confronting yourself without masks. It's seeing yourself not as you want to be seen, but as you really feel inside. And that can break you before it saves you. I have broken down many times in front of my own files. I have cried in front of memories that I didn't know still hurt. I have felt shame seeing how I betrayed myself, obeying instructions I never questioned. But every time I do it, something changes. As if by cleaning an old file, light has more space to enter. And I'm not talking about light in a poetic sense. I'm talking about real actions that begin to emerge in my life without me forcing them. New people, opportunities that used to pass me by, braver decisions because the subconscious isn't your enemy. It's a guardian, but sometimes it protects the wrong things. And if you don't approach it to show it something new, it will continue to defend what it knows, even if it destroys you. That's why when I think of everything Murphy taught, I don't see it as theory. I see it as a map. A map that shows me where the passages to those archives are and how I can enter without the guardian closing the door on me. The key is in repetition, in emotion, in the constant act of showing your mind a new story until it believes it more than the old one. And here I want to tell you something you might not like. You are already reprogramming your subconscious every day, just not always in your favor. Every time you repeat a fearful thought, you reinforce it. Every time you tell yourself, I can't, this isn't for me, the same thing always happens to me. You are recording that truth deeper. The subconscious hears everything and, what's worse, obeys everything. I don't know what file governs your life now, but I do know this. You can change it, not with one heroic act, but with a daily decision to feed your mind with the image, the word, and the emotion of what you do want to live. And at first it feels false. It feels like you're lying to yourself. But remember, you've already lied to yourself before when you told yourself that you weren't good enough, that you couldn't, that you weren't sufficient. The difference is that this time the lie will save you until it stops being a lie and becomes your only truth. And when that happens, when you open your eyes and notice that the world outside has started to move differently, that people treat you differently, that your fears lose strength, you will understand it. It wasn't the world that changed. It was your file. And when your file changes, everything changes. I don't know how much time you have left. I don't know how much pain you have archived, but I know that if you decide to do it, if today you sit in silence and dare to visit those internal rooms you have avoided for years, something will break, and something new will begin to be built. And that new something, although fragile at first, will be your true life. Not the one you inherited, not the one that was imposed on you, not the one that fear wrote, but the one you, with your hands, with your faith, and with your voice, chose to archive as your reality. The past isn't dead. The past is still creating your present. They made us believe that the past is a buried corpse, motionless, impossible to touch. They repeated to us that what happened can no longer be changed, that the only way to live is to accept it or ignore it. But Joseph Murphy said something I never forgot. Your mind doesn't distinguish between what was and what you imagine. For it, everything is now. And if everything is now, then the past isn't dead. It is still breathing inside you, molding every step you take. It's not in a cemetery. It's in your living room, sitting at your table, dictating who you are and who you can't be. And the most dangerous thing is that you don't even realize it. I discovered it the day I realized I was reacting to something that wasn't happening. A word from someone close to me made me feel the same emptiness I felt years ago when I heard a no that broke me. And I was paralyzed there, understanding that my present wasn't reacting to this person. It was responding to a ghost from the past. It's as if your life were a play where the actors change, but the script is always the same. And do you know who wrote that script? That's the you who lived something and archived it without ever reviewing it again. The past doesn't end. It recycles itself. Every memory you don't heal becomes a mold for your decisions today. If you were rejected in the past, you probably now avoid putting yourself out there. If you were betrayed, you now walk with a clenched fist, even in front of someone who comes to give you. If you grew up in scarcity, you now cling to everything for fear of losing it. It's not that you can't move forward. It's that you move forward with a shadow clinging to your ankle. But here is what breaks and saves me at the same time. If the past is still alive in you, you can also touch it. You can go in and rewrite it. Not in the external story. That was recorded by others. But in the internal one, the one that really governs you. And when you change the internal version, the external one loses its power over you. I remember the first time I dared to do it. It was with a moment that had haunted me for years. The time my father, in a fit of rage, told me I would amount to nothing. That phrase haunted me in every attempt to start something new. No matter how hard I tried, at some point, the voice would appear, "You're not good enough." Murphy taught that the subconscious believes everything you give it with emotion. So that night, I sat down, closed my eyes, and was back there. I felt the same air, heard the same sounds, saw his face, but this time in my mind, he wasn't yelling. He was looking me in the eyes and saying, "I'm proud of you. I know you're going to make it." And my heart reacted as if it had been that way from the beginning. I didn't change the past for others. I changed it for me. And in the archive that directs my present, that is now the truth. The past is like a river that doesn't stop flowing into the present. We believe we've already crossed it, but it keeps reaching us in every drop of fear, insecurity, and automatic reaction. You can't stop the river, but you can clean its waters. And the cleaning doesn't start outside, it starts inside, because your life is not governed by what happened, but by how you remember it. And that memory, even if it feels like a rock, is as malleable as clay if you take it with the hands of faith. It hurts me to see how many people live trapped in stories they don't review. People who have spent decades obeying a fact that lasted seconds, but they repeat every day like a prayer. And I'm not talking about denying it. I'm not talking about pretending it didn't happen. I'm talking about looking at that moment and choosing a version that feeds you instead of destroying you. I'm talking about taking the scene that broke you and giving it an ending that rebuilds you. Because if the past is still alive, you have the right to choose what version of it you want to live with you. I know what you're thinking. That doesn't change what happened. And it's true, it doesn't change the chronology, but it changes the only thing that matters, the way your soul interprets it. And when the interpretation changes, the weight disappears. What was once a chain becomes a stepping stone. What once weighed you down now propels you. And what you once feared is now a chapter you can read without bleeding. The past keeps creating your present because you haven't said goodbye to it. And maybe you don't have to. Maybe you have to invite it to change roles. If it was the villain, before, make it a mentor. If it was the tragedy before, make it Genesis. And if it was the excuse not to live, make it the reason to live stronger. This isn't cheap poetry. It's spiritual survival. Joseph Murphy said that the subconscious responds to the predominant image you hold with faith. And the predominant image you have of your life is made of your past. If you don't change it, the future will only be an echo of what you already lived. But if you change it, if you go in there and decide that moment no longer means what it meant, that it now means something else, the echo changes, and with it, everything that comes. That's why I'm talking to you like this today, without softening it. Stop protecting your pain as if it were a treasure. Stop telling yourself the same story, hoping for a different ending. The past is not dead, and as long as you continue to feed it with your attention, it will continue to mold your present. The only way to free yourself is to kill it or transform it. And the transformation isn't a one-day act. It's a commitment for every moment. Look inside yourself right now. Ask yourself, what part of my current life is a copy of something I lived before? What decisions today are contaminated by wounds I swore I had healed? How many current faces do I burden with the guilt and fears of people who are no longer there? And when you have the answer, don't ignore it. That answer is the key. If the past is still alive, then you have two options. Let it continue writing your present or take the pen and do it yourself. I chose the second, not because it's easy, but because the other one was slowly killing me. And every time I rewrite a scene, my present changes. It's not immediate, it's not perfect, but it's mine. And that is enough to keep going. The past is not a place you went to. It's a place where you still live, and until you get out of there, you won't get anywhere else. So get out. Or even better, stay. But remodel, change the walls, open, windows, let in the light. And when you do, you will realize something that will move you. The past wasn't dead. It was waiting for you to start over. A custom-made future. Creative projection. They always taught us to wait for the future as one waits for a train to arrive at the station. Sitting, looking at the tracks, hoping that what comes is written on a schedule we don't control. But no one told us that train isn't coming. You are driving it. Joseph Murphy repeated it in 1,000 ways. Your outer life is a projection of your inner life. There is no destiny you reach by chance. There is no tomorrow that appears without you having drawn it today, consciously or unconsciously, on the walls of your mind. The future isn't a mystery, it's a reflection. And if you don't choose it, someone else will choose it for you. I discovered it when I was on the verge of giving up. I believed that my life was an inevitable sequence of what I had already lived, that the future was just a dirty mirror of the past. But then I realized, if my present was built by my thoughts and beliefs of yesterday, then my tomorrow depended on what I imagined today. And that's when I understood that the future isn't waited for. It's manufactured, not in steel factories, but in invisible laboratories inside your mind. The problem is that most people project without knowing they are doing it. They walk with fear as a compass, with doubt as an architect, with the memory of failure as a mold. They think they are protecting themselves, but they are actually designing in advance the same falls they fear. The future for them is a self-fulfilling prophecy, and I lived it that way too. I unconsciously visualized everything I didn't want to happen. I repeated it in my mind as if it were inevitable, and the inevitable arrived. It wasn't black magic, it was law. Creative projection isn't just about imagining, it's about inhabiting the place you want to be before the time. It's feeling the victory with your body before it exists. Hearing in your chest the words you want, to be told, seeing yourself walking through that door, signing that contract, embracing that person, and staying there until your subconscious accepts it as truth. Murphy said that the subconscious doesn't know how to differentiate between the real and the vividly imagined. If you can make something feel real before it is, that something makes its way to you. But here's what not everyone wants to hear. Creatively projecting your future requires betraying the version of you that doesn't believe it deserves it. It requires leaving behind the one who makes excuses, the one who says, it's too late, the one who repeats, it's not for me. And that hurts because those versions of you have been living with you for years. You've been protected, although in the wrong way. They've kept you small so you wouldn't suffer, but they've also kept you small so you wouldn't live. The first time I truly did this exercise, not to test it, not to convince anyone, but to save myself, was on a day when I had less than nothing. I sat down, closed my eyes, and saw myself in an impossible place, walking toward a house I didn't have, hugging people I didn't know yet, with a security in my chest that I had never felt before. I didn't imagine it as a wish. I inhabited it as a memory, and something in me changed that day. Nothing on the outside moved immediately, but inside, something was decided. And from that day on, every step, every decision, every encounter brought me closer to that future, as if it were already written. Creative projection isn't asking the universe for something as if it were a waiter. It's showing up to life as if you have already received what you asked for. It's talking, walking, and deciding as that version of you who lives the tomorrow you want. And here's an uncomfortable truth. If you can't hold it in your mind, you won't be able to hold it in your hands. If there is no faith in your projection, the void of fear will fill it and return what you fear most. It hurts me to see how so many people use this law against themselves. They project themselves into arguments that haven't yet happened, into losses that haven't arrived, into endings that aren't real. And the obedient subconscious prepares the stage for it to happen. The future, then, doesn't arrive as a surprise. It arrives as the consequence of a script you wrote without realizing it. That's why I want you to understand something. Projecting your future is not a game. It's a pact with yourself. You can't do it one day and abandon it the next. You can't imagine yourself free at night and talk to yourself like a prisoner in the morning. Creative projection demands coherence. Thinking, feeling, and acting as if it were already true. And that doesn't mean you disconnect from reality. It means you decide which reality you want to grow. Joseph Murphy said that all change begins in the mind, and I have proven it. There is no achievement that wasn't first an image in my head. There is no miracle that wasn't first an instant of inner certainty. There is no future that wasn't born as a seed in the present, and when you understand it, you stop waiting. You start planting. Ask yourself right now, which version of myself am I feeding today? The one who projects from faith, or the one who projects from fear? The one who designs a future tailored to their dreams, or the one who repeats the mold of their past? Because the answer to that question is the real calendar of your life, not the one hanging on the wall, but the one your mind is printing with every thought you hold. I learned that the future is not improvised, it's rehearsed. That every night, before sleeping, I can visit the place I want to get to, and every morning when I wake up, I can walk as if I'm already there. And it doesn't matter how long it takes. Because every time I inhabit it in my mind, the bridge shortens, and one day, without warning, what I imagined stops being a projection and becomes the present. I'm not telling you to try it. I'm telling you to live it, because if you try, your mind knows it's optional. If you live it, your mind knows it's non-negotiable. And when your subconscious accepts something as non-negotiable, it moves everything to make it real. So don't wait for the train. Build it. Don't wait for the future to arrive. Go for it. Don't look at it as a mystery. See it as a play you are, already staging. And when you do, when you see yourself there with the clarity of one who remembers, not one who imagines, then you will understand that a custom-made future is not a dream. It is the inevitable consequence of a present you decided to project with your eyes closed and your heart open. The power of the timeless word-to-word isn't just a sound, it is a decree. It's the oldest, most dangerous, and most miraculous tool we have. Joseph Murphy said that the subconscious obeys any command it receives with faith, and those commands almost always travel in the form of a word. But I'm not just talking about what you say out loud. I'm talking about what you tell yourself in silence, in the intimacy of your mind, when no one is listening but you. Because the word you don't utter also creates. The word you silence stays, beating inside you until it finds a way to become matter. I learned this the hard way. For years, I repeated phrases that seemed harmless. Things are always hard for me. This isn't for people like me. I'm already used to losing. They were words that seemed like simple venting, but in reality, they were sentences. And every time I repeated them, my subconscious carved them deeper into stone. It wasn't the world denying me things. It was I who had signed an invisible contract for it to be so. And I had signed it with my own voice. The word is timeless because it doesn't stay in the moment you say it. It travels backward and forward, connecting your past, your present, and your future as if they were one single moment. When you curse who you are today, you not only damage your present, you infect the memory of who you were and condition the birth of who you will be. When you bless, however, you not only illuminate what you have now, you heal the wounds you thought were closed and fertilize what is to come. I remember a day when I was completely broke, without strength or direction. I was alone in my room and I heard myself say without thinking, "I'm finished." That phrase went through me like a knife, and at the same time, I felt something strange, a kind of echo inside me, as if my subconscious had caught it mid-air and said, "Understood. We'll make sure it happens." At that moment, I understood the real power of the word. It wasn't just an expression, it was a pact, and I decided to break it. That night, without strength and without knowing where to start, I said out loud, "I'm getting up." It wasn't true yet, but I pronounced it as if it were. I repeated it over and over with a faith that didn't come from my circumstances, but from my hunger for life. And although my body was still sunken, something inside me began to align with that command. It wasn't instant magic. It was a change of direction. And from that day on, I understood that every word is a seed, and that I was the only gardener of my destiny. Murphy insisted that words charged with emotion are engraved with fire in the subconscious mind. It doesn't matter if you say them with love or with anger. If there's intensity, they stay. And there lies the trap and the salvation. Because what hurts you the most, what you repeat the most in the midst of anger or sadness, is what takes root the fastest. And if you don't watch your words in those moments, you'll be planting fruits you won't want to eat tomorrow. The word is timeless because it can revive what seemed dead. There are phrases you heard 20 years ago that still bleed within you. And there are words that, if you say them today, can resurrect parts of you that you thought were lost. When someone says to you, "I believe in you," at the right moment, they are not only talking about now, they are correcting all the times you heard the opposite. Therefore, when you speak, you are not just building your present. You are traveling to the past to repair it and to the future to prepare it. I have seen lives change with a single phrase. I have seen broken people hear, "I forgive you," and transform as if someone had opened an invisible cell. I have seen men and women look in the mirror and say for the first time, "I am enough," and break down in tears because deep down they had been waiting decades to hear that from themselves. And I have seen others destroy years of work by repeating day after day, "I'm sure things will go wrong for me," until their life obeyed. The power of the timeless word is not about speaking prettily or denying what hurts. It's about speaking with responsibility, knowing that every word you say is a command that your life rushes to fulfill. It's about not lending your voice to fear or rage without first asking yourself if you want that to become real. And yes, sometimes you won't feel it. And there's the secret. It's not about feeling it at first. It's about deciding it. Murphy said that the subconscious responds to repetition with faith, and that means that even if at first your words seem hollow, if you hold them long enough, they will fill with their own meaning. So the question is, what are you going to repeat? The story that limits you or the one that expands you? The sentence that chains you or the one that frees you? Because the echo of your voice will be heard in places that don't yet exist. Today, I can look back and see that the words I told myself on my worst days were the ones that opened or closed the doors I found later. It wasn't luck. It wasn't chance. It was my tongue, that small muscle that can raise empires or reduce them to dust. And I don't want you to forget it. Every time you speak, you are signing a contract with your destiny. So speak as if your life depends on it. Because it does. Speak as if your words travel to your childhood to hug you and to your old age to bless you, because they do. And when you have to choose between being silent or saying something that will destroy you, remember, silence never betrays you, but the wrong word can haunt you for life. The power of the timeless word is that it knows no past, present, or future. It lives in all of them at once. So choose what you want to fill that infinite space with, because the words you say today will be the echo you hear tomorrow, and the voice that will resonate in the most hidden corners of who you were, are, and will be. Faith as a quantum switch. There is a point where life doesn't respond to logic, where all your calculations, your plans, your meticulously measured steps become useless and only one leap remains. Joseph Murphy called it faith, and not as a nice word that soothes, but as the raw force that turns on the invisible machinery that moves the universe. I have seen it break impossibilities, but I have also seen it turned off in people who, without knowing it, are sitting in front of the switch without touching it. Faith is just that, a quantum switch. No matter how dark it is, how cold it feels, if you activate it, the light comes on. If you don't, the light never arrives. I discovered it when I was exhausted from trying with my own strength. I had the perfect plan, the perfect strategy, even the discipline that others envied, but nothing was happening. It was like pushing a door that wouldn't open. And then I understood. The door doesn't open from the outside. The mechanism is inside, and the key is faith. I'm not talking about blind faith, the kind that repeats phrases without believing them, but about the faith that hurts, the one that clings when everything screams that it's useless, the one that, even while you're bleeding, says, "This is mine." Murphy said that faith is the only condition for your subconscious to accept an idea as real. You can repeat 1,000 affirmations, visualize every detail, but if you don't believe it deep down, you won't see it. The subconscious doesn't obey what you say, it obeys what you accept as truth, and that's the brutal part. Accepting as truth something that doesn't yet exist is going against everything you were taught. It is giving up evidence to embrace the invisible. Faith is a violent act against doubt. And I felt it that way because when I decided to believe in something I didn't yet see, I had to confront the echo of all my past defeats. Every time my mind told me, "This isn't going to happen," I responded with, "It's already done." Not because I felt it, but because I refused to turn off the switch. And over time, that faith stopped being an effort. It became a state. And when that happens, when faith stops being a struggle and becomes natural, reality has no choice but to align. But I'm going to tell you the uncomfortable truth. Faith doesn't always feel good. Sometimes it's walking in the middle of the night without a lamp, trusting that each step will lead you to solid ground. Sometimes it's continuing to plant seeds in the rain, even if hunger tells you to eat them now. Sometimes it's holding the image of a future that has no shape yet, while everything around you is crumbling. And in those moments, faith is the only cable that connects you to what doesn't yet exist. I've lost it more than once. I've fallen into the silence of disbelief, into the cold of thinking that all this talk about the mind, the law, the universe, was a deception. But there was always something, a spark, that made me try again. Sometimes it was a phrase, sometimes a memory, sometimes just the unbearable pain of staying where I was. And every time I touched the switch again, the energy returned. Not everything changed in an instant, but something in me lit up, and that was enough to keep going. Faith is quantum because it doesn't obey time. It doesn't wait for conditions to be perfect to turn on. It doesn't adjust to the calendar or deadlines. When you activate it, it acts here and now, but its effects can manifest at any time. It could be tomorrow or in a year, but the moment to turn it on is always this one. If you wait to have proof to believe, you're too late. Faith doesn't follow evidence, it creates it. Murphy explained it with a simplicity that sometimes hurts. Believe that you already have what you ask for, and you will have it. He didn't say, "When you see it, believe it." He said, "When you believe it, you will see it." And that destroys the common mindset. Because the mind conditioned by fear wants guarantees. It wants signed contracts. It wants to see the door open before it walks. Faith, on the other hand, asks you to walk toward the closed door and trust that it will open, right when you are in front of it. Think about this. Electricity was always here, even before man knew how to use it. The switch doesn't create the energy, it just releases it. That's what faith is like. It doesn't create the miracle, it just lets it happen. And if you don't activate it, no matter how much potential there is, you will live in darkness. I know. You're waiting for something. Maybe an answer, a sign, an opportunity that seems not to be coming. And I know that logic tells you that you can't keep believing without proof, but logic is a tool, not a God. And in the field of faith, logic is just an observer who arrives later. If you want to see what you've never seen, you will have to believe what you've never believed. I talk to you this way because I know what it's like to stand still in front of the switch, knowing that touching it changes everything, but fearing that nothing will happen. What they don't tell you is that faith doesn't always cause thunder. Sometimes when you turn it on, everything stays the same, at least in appearance. But something in the invisible structure of the world moves. A thread tightens, a door begins to unlock, a coincidence begins to form out of your sight, and one day, without warning, the impossible enters your door as if it had been planned all along. Don't underestimate this power. Don't use it halfway. Don't say "I believe," while inside you hold doubt like a charm. Let it go. Throw it away. Because as long as your faith is conditioned, the switch will only move halfway, and the light you receive will be dim. The faith that turns on everything is the one that leaves no room for doubt. It is not negotiated. It is not explained. It is decided. I learned that faith isn't a gift you receive. It's a muscle you train. Every time you choose to believe when it would be easier to give up, you strengthen it. Every time you hold a vision beyond the evidence, you widen it. And a moment comes when you no longer need to make an effort to believe. You simply are faith. And when you get there, the whole world becomes a reflection of what you decided. So ask yourself now, what switch do I have turned off for fear of turning it on? What reality am I avoiding activating because I fear it won't work? Because here's the truth that hurts the most. There is nothing sadder than living in darkness when the light is within reach. Faith, as a quantum switch, doesn't wait for everything to be ready. It is the spark that prepares everything. And even if the whole world calls you crazy, even if the evidence screams that it's impossible, touch the switch. Not because you have proof, but because you decide that the light is already yours. And when you do, you will understand that faith was never a naive act. It was the secret code that was always waiting for you to change everything. A complete method for rewriting your past. There are wounds that don't bleed, but they are still open. Moments that were left behind on the calendar, but not in your skin. And even if the world tells you that the past cannot be changed, there is one truth that Joseph Murphy repeated over and over again. Your past lives in you, and if it lives, it can be transformed. I don't mean erasing what happened, but pulling out the thorn that is still stuck in you. Because time isn't a straight line. It's a room with hidden doors, and if you know where to look, you can enter again. I had to do it. It wasn't out of courage. It was out of necessity. There were scenes that repeated in my mind as if they were cursed movies, arguments, betrayals, losses. I told myself they were already in the past, but every time I remembered them, I felt the same pain, the same anger, the same emptiness. And that's when I understood it. If the pain is still alive, then the moment is too. It didn't stay behind. It accompanies me. It defines me. And if I want a different present, it's not enough to ignore it. I have to go back and write it differently. The method for rewriting your past doesn't start in the memory. It starts with your willingness to enter it without fear. If you do it with resentment, you will only reinforce the wound. If you do it with pity, you will get trapped. You have to enter with something bigger than pain, with the certainty that you are the owner of your story, even the parts you didn't choose. First, you choose the scene. Not all of them, just one, the heaviest one. The one that, when you close, your eyes imposes itself as if it were right now. You look at it without running away. You let it come with all its details. The light of that day, the smell, the exact words. If you feel the knot in your stomach, you're doing well. You're not here to gloss over it. You're here to see it as it was. Then you freeze the frame as if you were pressing an invisible pause button. Observe everything, but not as the victim. Who was there? Observe it as the creator who is now in control. Ask yourself what you would have wanted to happen. Not what should have happened, but what would have healed your heart in that instant. And this is where the timeless law is activated. In the theater of your mind, what you decide now replaces what was recorded. You put the scene back into motion, but this time you rewrite it. You change words, gestures, endings. If you were humiliated, imagine that you defended yourself with strength and clarity. If you were abandoned, imagine that someone came to hug you before you fell. If you lost something, imagine that you got it back. It's not empty fantasy. It's the language your subconscious understands. And if you do it with real emotion, your mind will accept the new version as the authentic one. The key, and I learned this the hard way, is to feel it as if it were happening now. It's not enough to imagine it as a distant observer. Get into your own body. Listen to your own voice saying the words you needed. Feel the hands that hold you. Breathe the calm you never had. Stay there until your heart believes it, even for a second. That second is the crack through which the new memory enters. When you finish, don't go back to the old version. Don't feed it with your thoughts. If your mind tries to return to it, interrupt it. No, that's not how it happened. What happened was this. And you present the new scene to it. Do it as many times as necessary. At first, your mind will tell you that you're lying. Don't listen to it. The subconscious doesn't differentiate between something you lived physically and something you lived vividly in your imagination. What you repeat with emotion becomes your story. Joseph Murphy said that the imagination is the mind's scissors, cutting and replacing old patterns. And every time you cut a memory that limits you and put in one that strengthens you, you are reprogramming not only your past, but the entire direction of your life. Because every action you take today is influenced by what you believe you lived. Change what you believe you lived, and you will change what you allow yourself to live now. I did it with the scene that hurt me the most. A night when I felt that everything was collapsing and no one was there. I rewrote it until it was no longer a story of abandonment, but one of encounter. It wasn't overnight, but there was a moment, months later, when someone hugged me in real life and my mind, instead of going back to the old memory, evoked the new one. That was the day I knew I had succeeded. I had not only changed my past, I had freed my present. So if you are listening to this, don't stay with the lie that it's over and can't be changed. You can, not to deceive yourself, but to heal, not to deny what happened, but to choose the version that allows you to live without chains. Your story is yours. Take it, open it, cut it, write it again, and every time you do, remember that you are not manipulating time. You are reclaiming the right you always had, to be the author of your life. Because when you rewrite your past, you don't just change a memory, you change the person you are when you remember it. And in that instant, you begin to create a present that is finally not made of pain, but of freedom. Create your future, starting today. The future isn't a place you arrive at. It's a bridge you build every time you think, every time you feel, every time you act. Joseph Murphy understood this like few others. What you accept as truth in your mind now, sooner or later becomes the stage you walk on. And while many wait for time to bring them something new, time only gives them more of the same because they keep planting the same seeds. If you want a different future, you have to create it today, not tomorrow, not when things get better, not when you feel ready. Today. I understood it the day I got tired of waiting. I had spent years telling myself, it will come, and repeating phrases that sounded nice but didn't move anything. And one day I asked myself, if my future depended only on what I think and do today, am I building something I want to live? The answer hit me. I was feeding the same fear, the same scarcity, the same doubt I wanted to leave behind. And that's how I realized that it wasn't time that was against me. It was me. Creating your future starting today means living as if you are already the person you want to be. It's not about waiting for the result to appear to change. It's about changing now so that the result has no choice but to appear. If you want abundance, you have to start thinking, feeling, and acting like an abundant person before the money arrives. If you want love, you have to feel loved before someone appears. If you want health, You have to treat your body as if it were already strong, even if it is still weak. And here's what no one tells you. This doesn't feel natural at first. Your whole past will scream that it's a lie. Your logic will tell you that you're just playing make-believe. And that's where most people give up, but that's also where the future is forged, because in the instant you decide to hold a vision, even without proof, you are hacking the system of time. You are writing the version of yourself that you will live later. Murphy said that the subconscious doesn't distinguish between the real and the imagined, and I proved it. I started visualizing every morning not what I wanted, but what I already was in my mind. I saw my hands touching what I dreamed of. I felt the texture. I heard the sounds. And above all, I felt the gratitude as if I already had it. At first, it was forced. But one day I stopped imagining it and started remembering it. And in that moment, I understood that something had lit up. It's not about deceiving yourself. It's about deciding which version of yourself you feed. Every thought is a brick. Every emotion is the cement. Every action is the shape. And the building you construct with that will be your home in 1, 5, or 10 years. The problem is that many people build prisons with their fears and then are surprised to live locked up. I did it many times. I found myself planning my future from a place of lack, thinking about what I didn't have, what I was afraid of losing, what I was missing, and the future that arrived always had that bitter taste. One day I understood that creating my future starting today was also an act of brutal responsibility. It meant stop blaming my past, my luck, the system, and accept that what I sow today will be what I reap later, whether I like it or not. Something powerful happens when you live as if you are already in your ideal future. Your energy changes, and with it, the people and opportunities that come closer. It's not naive magic, it's invisible physics. You become a magnet for what you vibrate with. And the vibration is not changed by waiting, it's changed by deciding. Think about this. Every morning you have the option to act from your old self or from your new self. The old self reacts the same as always. It repeats the same habits, looks for the same excuses. The new self acts as if it is already where it wants to be, not because it ignores reality, but because it is building a reality that is bigger than the current one. One day, without you noticing, the future you imagined becomes your present, and when you live it, it seems obvious, as if it was always destined to happen. But it wasn't destiny, it was a choice. It was the result of having walked toward it, every day without waiting for it to appear, and I tell you this because I know it can hurt. Creating your future starting today means giving up the comfort of blaming time. It means stop waiting for miracles as if they were favors and start manufacturing them. It means that if in a year you are not where you want to be, you will have to accept that it wasn't time. It was you who didn't sow differently. So look at yourself today and ask yourself, am I being the person my future needs? Because if you're not that person today, you won't be tomorrow. If you don't decide it now, you won't decide it later. The moment isn't a point on the calendar. The moment is an internal state called now. And if you don't use it, you lose it. I chose to use it. And since then, every day, even on the bad ones, I do something, think something, feel something that belongs to my future, not my past. Sometimes it's a small gesture, sometimes it's a radical decision, but it's always a step forward because I know that every time I do it, my future stops being a wish and becomes an appointment that is already marked in time. If you are listening to this, understand something. Your future doesn't come from the outside. It won't suddenly arrive. You are writing it right now with every word you say, every thought you hold, every emotion you allow. So decide if you want to write it from fear or from faith. Because when it arrives, you won't be able to change it. You can only live it. And if you're going to live it, let it be something worthwhile, something that makes you look in the mirror a few years from now and say, I built this with my own hands, and I started the day I stopped waiting, because that day, believe me, is today. And remember, what you hear here isn't for you to admire, it's for you to live. Don't wait for signs. Become the sign. This was just listening. Now let your silence work for you.